Hey everyone, it's Brenna, and in this video we are going to be talking about the first letter in our AIM acronym, which stands for Developing Accessible Visualizations. And so when we talk about accessibility, it's typically from a standpoint of making sure people with disabilities can access our information that someone without a disability can do in the same manner. And so with our data visualizations, in this video we're going to be specifically talking about people that have a disability that are color vision deficient or have issues distinguishing one color from another. How do they access our information in our data visualizations, and are they doing that in the same manner, able to do so that someone that it doesn't have a color deficiency? Also, someone that is blind or visually impaired. In this video, we're going to be talking about how do they interact with our information and how can we make sure our visualizations are accessible for them. And then also people with learning disabilities or learning difficulties. How do we make sure that they are able to access our data visualizations and that information in the same way? And so I think it's a really important topic to focus on with accessibility because it's estimated that about 1 in 5 Americans have some sort of disability. And so if you are just completely ignoring this fact of accessibility in your visualizations, you could be losing a pretty good chunk of people that you are reaching in your population. So hopefully you'll find this video to have some tips and tricks for you to double check that your visualizations are accessible to all. And you'll notice that as we go through these tips and tricks, a lot of them are just good design aspects. And that's really what accessibility focuses on. So in this way, not only are we making sure people that have some sort of disability are accessing our information, but it's really just so that everyone can just more easily access our information and understand our visualizations. And so now we are going to talk about someone that is color deficient. And like I mentioned, that is when someone cannot distinguish one color from another very well, and it depends on the severity of the issue and also what colors, depending on that person's disability. So really any time that you are using some sort of color in your visualization to display some sort of information or depict some sort of trend, you really should be taking this extra step that I'm about to show you. It really just takes a few minutes, and it's called a color vision deficiency tool. And this just double checks to make sure that someone that does have a color vision deficiency can still access your information and be able to distinguish between the different colors you use in your visualizations. So there are a lot of great tools out there on the internet. One that I'm going to show you here is called Coblis, and the URL is on the screen here. And I'm just going to walk you through what it looks like on the website and how you can use this in your own visualizations. So when you go to this website, you can upload any sort of image file. So I just went ahead and uploaded one of my images here, and you'll notice at the top of the screen there are some different radio buttons for you to click, and these just kind of cycle through all of the different types of color deficiencies that people may have, and just double check that it kind of will mimic what they will see. And so you can then check to see, okay, can I still distinguish between these two colors, or is it a little difficult? If so, then that might be a signal you'll want to choose different colors. So that first slide you saw was the original image. Now on this slide, I changed it, you can see, to someone that now does have a color vision deficiency, And this kind of will mimic what they see. So looks like I can still tell the difference between those two colors. So it's a good plus. And probably what I would recommend is just cycle through all of these different types of color deficiencies with your data visualizations. And you'll notice that the colors will change, just making sure you can always tell the difference between the two. You'll notice even if I go to this more monochromatic look here, I still can tell a little bit of a distinguishing factor. It looks like that top color, that first gen, is slightly darker and blacker than that non-first gen. So that indicates that someone with these different types of color deficiencies, no matter which one, looks like they can still distinguish between those two categories color-wise. So that is a good sign, checking to make sure that that is accessible for someone that has a color deficiency. Now we're going to talk a little bit about someone that is visually impaired or blind and how they access our information in their visualizations. So because the person cannot just visually look at our graph or chart and gather information that way, these people typically use what's called a screen reader. And a screen reader works by either on a computer, tablet, phone. It's a device that will auditorily read out the text to the person. And so what will happen is if you have some sort of graph, chart, image, if you don't take this next step that we're about to talk about, then that screen reader will just skip right over your image. And so that person that is accessing your visualization now won't be able to gather any information from that visualization because that screen reader doesn't know what to read out loud for that person to auditorily hear. So instead, the way that you can get around this is to add a caption to your visualization. And in Microsoft Word, this is called alternative text or alt text. Now, there are a lot of different tutorials on how to do this in Microsoft Word. If you Google it, it's pretty easy, just takes a couple of minutes. And really you can think of alt text as a caption for your data visualization. So on the screen here, I have some tips about what you might want to include in your alt text. So I would recommend having one sentence that starts out just talking about what type of graph or chart do you have displayed. So maybe you would have a bar chart or a scatter plot. You want to specifically mention what type of visualization you have displayed. And then also briefly talk about what type of information are you displaying, because someone isn't going to be able to look at your visualization if they do have some sort of visual impairment or are blind and say, oh yeah, I see an image of an apple and here's an orange, so we're comparing apples and oranges. They won't be able to do that. So you'll want to briefly describe what type of data are you displaying. You'll also want to mention, and typically you can do this in a sentence or two, what is the main takeaway from your visualization? So maybe the point of you making this visualization was to make some sort of comparison between one group and another. If so, you would want to mention that and talk about maybe how group A has a 30% higher score than group B, and specifically put that in there so the person can gather that information similar to someone that would not have a vision impairment and could still make those comparisons. And really the goal of this alt text is you want to make sure you're providing equivalent information from what someone that doesn't have a visual impairment can see. So whatever you think is important for that person to understand or take away from your visualization, you'll want to include that in your alt text. We're providing an equal opportunity here, so make sure that you convey that in as many sentences as you need to take in your alt text. And also, which I think is pretty cool, you can even link a CSV file to that alt text. And then what the screen reader will do is take that person to the CSV file and start reading out loud your different data points that you used to create your visualization. So this is a great way if you think that extra step is needed for the person to really understand what are all your statistics that you used to create your visualization. That can be done for someone that has a visual impairment or is blind. Also, for someone that is visually impaired or blind, you want to make sure that you provide very clear titles and also descriptions in your data visualizations. Now, this is kind of something you should already be doing, but it's really great for someone that has that screen reader, because keep in mind, they're not going to be able to visually see some aspects of your visualizations. So providing that clear title of, this is what my chart is specifically showing, maybe even put in, this is my main takeaway, and include that right in your title. And then that way people don't have to be able to see it in order to gather that information. It's also a great tip for someone that has some sort of color vision deficiency, because a lot of times we will convey our messages and our main takeaways and our visualizations through color. So we'll put the maybe largest group, their value that they had maybe more points on a test score than other groups, we'll put that in a different color to indicate that. But someone that has a color vision deficiency might not be able to distinguish that separate color from your other colors in your visualization. So putting some sort of clear title or description somewhere throughout your report can really make sure that someone that has a color vision deficiency, they're not relying on that message conveyed through color in your visualization. And then also for someone that has a learning disability or difficulty, I would really recommend using simple icons as much as you can throughout your visualizations. And this is just a great way to kind of give a little cue or a little clue as to what sort of information you're displaying in your visualization. So for example, let's say that we are showing some sort of chart and we're displaying different revenue values. And so maybe at first thought, someone with a learning disability or difficulty might not really think, oh yeah, revenue means money. They might not put that sort of connection together, but if you use some sort of icon, such as the one shown here on the screen, then that person might think, oh yeah, okay, revenue, money, cash, yeah, I see the connection. And then they'll be able to maybe more quickly grasp that information than if you didn't have that icon in there. So I really hope that you found this video helpful, and just a couple minutes of different steps you can take in your visualizations to make sure that they're accessible.